Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here with your weekly essay read, this one entitled Judgment Day, and subtitled How Debt Forgiveness Could Have Saved Rome. The major theme of this essay is debt forgiveness, a practice widely observed by early agricultural societies until the Romans forfeited economic sustainability by not forgiving debts. Key takeaways. Number 1, a mass influx of slaves into Roman society rendered debts unpayable, while the Roman legal system automatically awarded collateral to creditors. Number 2, the forgiveness preached by Jesus was an alternative to the foreclosure process that exacerbated dangerous wealth inequality within Roman society. Number 3, after the 2008 financial crisis, the United States emulated Rome by opting for foreclosure instead of forgiveness. Foreclosure. Rome's historical arc from republic to empire was driven by an economic transformation. Free citizen farmers once comprised some 90% of the Roman population, but the aristocracy reserved for themselves the bulk of the land and slaves captured during extensive military conquests. They frequently combined these assets into vast slave plantations called latifundia. But small farmers couldn't compete with slave labor. The rise of the plantations put them out of business and forced them into default on their mortgages. Unfortunately, the collateral on those mortgages was usually their farmland itself. During foreclosure proceedings, the unconscious logic of Roman jurisprudence systematically delivered the bulk of Rome's farmland into the hands of already wealthy creditors. Because the Roman legal system was focused on the precise execution of contracts on an individual basis, it was blind to the dire consequences of extreme wealth inequality at the societal level. As a result, millions of propertyless people lived at the mercy of just a couple thousand elites who owned everything. In their 1944 classic Caesar and Christ, legendary historians Will and Ariel Durant wrote, "Wealth mounted, but it did not spread. In 104 BC, a moderate Democrat reckoned that only 2,000 Roman citizens owned property." After the small farmers of Rome had been displaced by slaves, they lost any incentive to fight for a society in which they no longer had a stake. Military recruitment became a problem that the aristocracy solved by hiring foreign mercenaries like Alaric the Visigoth. But those mercenaries eventually betrayed their masters. Alaric sacked Rome in 410 AD, and Roman civilization soon thereafter vanished from the Italian peninsula. Forgiveness. Because they understood the danger of extreme wealth inequality, the Bronze Age kings of Mesopotamia periodically forgave debts. The Greeks, too, used forgiveness to keep debts in line with the ability of debtors to repay. But the Romans became historical pioneers by not forgiving debt and instead upholding its sanctity with no regard for the consequences. The Jewish inhabitants of the Roman province of Syria Palestina also practiced periodic debt forgiveness. That province's most famous citizen, Jesus Christ, made forgiveness the central theme of his ministry. During his debut sermon in his hometown of Nazareth, Jesus recited a passage from Jewish scripture commanding debt forgiveness. Furthermore, his Lord's Prayer contains the line, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." The forgiveness advocated for by Jesus was a specific economic doctrine with a proven track record of success. It could have prevented the chaos that afflicted Rome during his lifetime. A superior legal system would have taken into account the fact that small farmers were defaulting on their mortgages through no fault of their own. If their debts had been written down to match their actual ability to repay, Rome's free farmers could have remained on their farms instead of being forced off their property and into desperation. Such a doctrine could have saved Rome. Instead, the aristocracy accumulated unprecedented wealth through the systematic dispossession of their countrymen. It was a recipe for social and economic chaos. Rather than embracing the forgiveness commanded by Jesus, the Romans put him to death and continued, undeterred, on their path towards the Judgment Day he warned them about. The 2008 financial crisis. During the 2008 financial crisis, America faced a similar choice between forgiveness and foreclosure that the Romans once did. The root of that crisis was the fraudulent issuance of subprime mortgages to borrowers who couldn't actually afford them. The rampant sale and resale of these unpayable loan contracts imperiled the entire global financial system. Up until 2008, the Federal Reserve was limited to buying U.S. Treasury bonds. But new legislation allowed it to purchase mortgage-backed securities at face value directly from investment banks. Between 2008 and 2014, approximately $4.5 trillion of public funds were allocated to this so-called quantitative easing program. Alternatively, those fraudulent mortgages could simply have been written down to reflect the actual ability of debtors to pay them. Though some banks certainly would have failed in this forgiveness scenario, it would have cost far less public money to bail out people rather than banks. But, just as in Rome, wealthy creditors wield enormous influence over the American government, and they prefer foreclosure to forgiveness. Because of their policy preference, 10% of all U.S. mortgages went into foreclosure during the 2008 financial crisis, and America added trillions to its national debt. The 2008 financial crisis vividly illustrates the fact that we're still grappling with the same political and economic forces that once preoccupied Jesus Christ and ultimately toppled the Roman Empire. Millions were kicked out of their homes at great public expense to preserve the wealth of yet another oligarchy. Like Rome, America is choosing foreclosure instead of forgiveness. Conclusion. According to its own historians, Roman society collapsed because of debt. In his 2018 book, And Forgive Them Their Debts, Dr. Michael Hudson wrote, Livy, Plutarch, and other Roman historians blamed Rome's decline on creditors using fraud, force, and political assassination to impoverish and disenfranchise the population. Early Christianity was a reaction against this aristocratic insistence on foreclosure over forgiveness. Modern oligarchies still manage to have everything their own way, despite grave consequences that Roman history warns us about. In one of his epistles, the Roman poet Horace wrote, Mutato nomine de te fabula narrator. That means, change the name and the story is told about you. Alrighty, folks. Well, that concludes this week's audio essay. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, considering stopping by systemfailure.org and paying us a little visit there. At systemfailure.org, you can view the text version of these weekly essays, complete with further materials and the various paintings. Now, you can also sign up to receive the text version of these weekly essays every single Sunday morning, right there in your email inbox. Furthermore, if you'd like to get in touch with either Brian or myself, you can accomplish that feat over on the About page simply by clicking on the appropriate name. Alrighty, well, I will be back on Monday with another regularly scheduled edition of the System Failure Podcast with Brian. Can't wait to talk to you all then. In the meantime, hope you're having a great week.